been almost a year to the date that you presented, you birthed to the world your second short film, and you've just been winning prizes and going to like prestige film fests since Sundance. I think you went to Clermont, and was it Berlin as well?
No, South by Southwest,
yes.
Rotterdam, Aspen, Palm Springs.
That whole first quarter, like the bingo card that you would want out of all bingo cards.
Yeah.
And congratulations on that prize. So this film stayed with me when I watched it virtually since January. So I'm really happy that we're here. I get to speak to you in the flesh at the Red Sea Film Festival. You're just coming back from the Atlas workshop in Marrakesh.
Yes.
Which is a big deal, actually. I've been following that marketplace for a while, and it just gets bigger and bigger and better and better. So right now you're sort of like moving into one world as you're leaving your short behind. So we'll first jump into the short, ask you questions that you unfortunately answered maybe a billion times before.
That's okay.
But so when I was thinking about the film, what I like about films like Gosford Park or Tatsi's Mon Oncle or even Parasite is that there's like this vertical template to discuss people that are not subservient but on different levels of society. And I was wondering, I know that you had seen this person, a person on a crane. How did you know that you wanted to explore that character through levels that are more grounded?
So, as you said, it first started when I saw a man standing on top of a crane cabin and realizing that he was praying. That image very much stuck in my head, and it just opened up a world in my brain where I was thinking about all of these cranes that we always see, but we never really see or think about the person inhabiting that little cabin. This tiny person who's operating this huge machine and who can see the world, but nobody can see him. So that was the first level of curiosity that led me to then start doing research and going to a lot of construction sites. And every time I went to construction sites, I would always feel it was a very masculine space. It was a very loud space. You can hardly hear yourself thinking because of the cacophony. And it's a space in Lebanon, at least, where construction workers were generally Syrian, undocumented, underpaid workers who tend to move as a whole and try to call as least attention to themselves as possible. They always tend to sleep in the same space,
living quarters,
arrive in the same van, and they felt and seemed pretty replaceable to the higher-ups and the other managers. So, but they all agreed on one thing, which is that the crane operator specifically, that role, was set apart as the person who arrived in the morning with the rest, but he got to get on his ladder early morning and climb up and leave all of that behind. He would leave behind the masculinity, he would leave behind the cacophony and the noise, and he would leave behind whatever social labels and stigmas were placed on him, whatever need to kind of be invisible and call the least attention to himself possible. He could leave all that behind as he climbed that ladder and entered his kind of safe space and his private space.
I want to say that on a couple of levels, it's actually a quite subversive film in attempting to depict this person's life. Right there, showing the spotlight on what that looks like. An undocumented worker is in its act very, I don't want to say frowned upon, but it is controversial. When we're thinking about what's happening right now with the World Cup, we're thinking about these people. But there's also this other thing where you introduce movement and color when he is on the top, the pedestal, and I think that in itself is a manifestation of his artistic side, but also this inner conflict. I was wondering if that's sort of like, I haven't seen your previous short film, and I imagine Pigeon Wars might contain a little bit of that. Is that something where, are you looking to have a film vocabulary that has a lot to say when saying the same thing? Well,
first of all, you're right that it's not common to tell these kinds of stories. And I think even I myself was a perpetrator of assuming that you would know everything you need to know about a person when you just see them as part of a group. Like in Lebanon, we would see them in the minivan driving by, and you know exactly what it is. It's a minivan of Syrian construction workers going to spend their day at a construction site. But that's not really who someone is. What makes someone who they are is not what they happen to be, what gender they are, what social class they belong to, or what country they belong to, and what political situation it's in. What makes someone really, really unique and special and an individual is their unique dreams, their desires. What would they do had they not been born under these specific set of circumstances, if they weren't dealt those specific set of cards? All of these things I just mentioned, they're really arbitrary, but as humans, what sets us apart is when you see that person in their private space by themselves. Usually for other people you would say in the shower, for example, by yourself holding a shampoo bottle, what would come out? Or when you put your head on a pillow before you sleep, what would really be coming out? And that was kind of the experiment in Warsha, is to see Muhammad specifically, not one worker, not all workers, Muhammad specifically. Maybe his desire here, what I'm exploring, is to have been a performer, a singer, to embody this celebrity and this icon diva that he's always seen and watched, and that kind of created something in him. So for me, I think even in my previous short, which is called In White, and in that one, it was the story of a Lebanese girl who lives in New York, back in Beirut for her father's funeral, wanting to kind of shake up the traditional rites of a funeral because she wanted to mourn her dad a specific way, and coming in confrontation with her mom, who was telling her what is the traditional way of mourning. So I think in between In White, Warsha, and Pigeon Wars, there's definitely a theme that repeats, in which my characters are reconciling between how they're supposed to be behaving and how they would love to be behaving themselves, like who they are and who they have to be. And there's this inner life and outer life that are kind of in confrontation, and in each instant, and even my first short, Kaleidoscope, a little kid who had a huge imagination and who loved also kind of like doing arts and crafts and like being really imaginative, and whose dad kind of forced him to have a loss of innocence moment and come of age and realize that life is not always, cannot continue to be so colorful, and it's time to kind of grow up and set. So basically in all of my films, it feels like it's a different moment and a different side looking at the same thing. I can't explain why I'm interested in that. Maybe because I myself moved from Beirut to New York at age 21, and I myself had my own kind of rediscovering who I am when outside of my home. I cannot let go of my home. It is a lot of who I am. My culture is a lot of who I am. But there's also this freedom that comes when you are in anonymity, where you can really look at yourself in the mirror and you really redefine who you are and who you want to be, away from all of these labels, eyes, society, norms, and all of these things that usually are placed upon you.
Fascinating. Just because we're talking about that project, a thought occurred to me. So Pigeon Wars, again, I want to say that perhaps the nucleus of it is steeped in a realism. Is this, has the project changed because the Beirut, Lebanon of before blast, post blast might be two actual different worlds altogether?
Yeah.
Did that significant moment sort of inform you, or did it change what you have on paper?
No. So Pigeon Wars takes place before the revolution, before the economic crisis, before the explosion. But it's on purpose. It's kind of represents the time where I was in university, where I was an undergrad. The female character represents a time where I and my friends were 20 and feeling like we wanted to change the world and that we could change the world. And I'm setting the story during election period in Beirut, and I think it's an opportunity for me to kind of explore some of the reasons why we reached where we reached. Like the female character represents a person who feels above elections, who chooses not to vote because there is no one available, and she makes a friendship with another character called Hassan, who himself comes from a different class and is in a situation where he is forced to vote because the political party he subscribes to actually gives him a lot of financial aids and services that the government doesn't. So I feel like these are part of the reasons, like these two represent some of the reasons why we've reached where we reached, where you have some people who belong to a certain class who decide not to vote at all, and others who are forced to because they are being helped. And with those elections coming by, we end up with a kind of government that is mostly filled with these political parties who are using their people and buying their people off, and the people who didn't vote feeling unrepresented, but also whose fault is that? And so it's all something I fault myself in, of course, as well. But going back to that time is not because I want to avoid the Lebanon we're in, but because I'm kind of trying to look back and study and understand how we got here, kind of.
Did he surprise you as a vehicle for you to express these ideas? What did he bring to the character?
Well, he is a huge part of the story as a whole, because what I had in the beginning, the nucleus was the story of a crane operator seeking privacy and leaving the rest of the world behind so he can climb above it all and have a moment of silence and moment of calm so his true self can be revealed. What his true self was, that was only after meeting the main actor did the second part of the film and the main crux of the film come to life. It was cooking in my head, and around that time, the main actor, whose name is Khansa, dropped his first single with his first music video that was amazing. And then I went to see him live in concert in Lebanon in a place called Metro Medina, and he put on a performance that was transcendental. He was blurring the lines between gender in such a beautiful way, where he would belly dance and he would have a manly kind of muscled body, and then he would sing and move and perform in a way where you just forget and don't even care what gender you're looking at, and just appreciate an art above all. So when he and I started talking, and I told him I was working on a film about a crane operator, and we were connecting on our mutual love for drag queens and the freedom that comes with embodying a character that is far away, that is a character on stage, that is regardless of sexuality or of gender, but really this facade that you can own and that freedom it can give you in performing. This is when we started brainstorming and thinking, what if that is one of the things that the crane operator is seeking in that privacy to explore, and why the hell not? So he is a huge part in the story, and then he was able to really pour his heart into the character, because even though he is not a Syrian construction worker who belongs to this class or who belongs to this situation and environment, he did grow up in a very macho and patriarchal household, where he himself had a lot of difficulty to find moments, steal moments where he could experiment with his art and his music and his dance away from everyone's eyes. And a lot of times he himself had to put himself in hide his true self in a facade to fit into a society. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, where you put on a skin that you believe society wants to see, and only in your private moments can you really express yourself and be yourself. So he was able to go deep into a lot of things from his own childhood and his own experience, and bring it into Muhammad, the character, who doesn't have a single line of dialogue, but who has a very rich inner life. That Khansa, even though it was his first acting role in his life, I believe because he's a dancer and because he's a very emotional and sensitive performer, he was able to bring that across only through his eyes and body language.
2 of the 6 people that were named at the Red Sea Arab Stars of Tomorrow, it's screened daily. The other filmmaker is she presented a really genius film at Sundance the year before you, I believe, or maybe it was the 2 years before that. And in the thank you credits, I remember seeing Mounia. I can never pronounce her name properly. Akl?
Yeah, you
don't pronounce a K, right?
Yeah. But I mean, you can say Akl.
How is I want to call it the Lebanese state of cinema right now as we speak? Obviously, there's a little bit of a upheaval at the heart of the country, but how would you describe Lebanese national cinema as we speak? Like, is there a new generation of new voices, particularly strong female filmmaker presence on the film festival circuit?
Well, Mounia Akl and I are very good friends since school. We've known each other since we were 6 years old. We went to the same school, grew up together.
Wow.
We had, in our senior year in high school, we took an elective, and it was both our kind of first introduction into cinema. And even my first short film in my life when I was 17, I played the role of Mounia in one of my films. And so both of us knew we really loved cinema since a very young age, but neither of us really had the courage to go straight into film. I went into graphic design, she went into architecture, and then as soon as we both graduated, I ended up in New York doing NYU grad film, and she ended up in Columbia doing grad film there. So I think there's something about film that it is kind of an addiction. It is something that you maybe are told or try to, bury throughout your life and think maybe this is not the smartest or the wisest, because there aren't that many examples around you of people who are making a living, who are doing it, without a lot of difficulty. I mean, Nadine Labaki was one of the first.
Yeah, she's the forefront.
Exactly, within our generation at least. Of course, there's Maroon Baghdadi before, but that's way older. Nadine Labaki is the first woman that I saw coming from Lebanon and reaching heights like Cannes Film Festival and a lot of others. So that definitely felt like there was a possibility. And when I think both Mounia and I realized that there's not something we can shake and it's something that we can't get out of our heads, we need to do it, we just went for it and worked really, really hard and did whatever we can to forge new paths. And I think we are part, along with a few other people that I can name, like Cyril Aris, George Berbari, a lot of Elie Daghir, a lot of young filmmakers, that we are trying to build this generation where we help each other out and support each other. We talk all the time about our difficulties. We pass opportunities to each other, give advice to each other, because we feel like maybe in previous generations there were fewer seats at the table. And in this, what we're trying to do now is enforce our seats, all of them at the table.
Take your place.
Exactly, and not feel like there's one that we have to all compete for, but to really raise each other up and lift each other up. So I can't speak for the entire Lebanese generation. There's also a younger generation coming up. Each one dealing with its own set of difficulties, because Lebanon, God knows Lebanon's a difficult place already to live or to thrive, and even more so economically and politically. So film is already a difficult field. It's even harder when you're Lebanese, but the people who do it are people who just can't not do it. And so stories, we have them. Technicians and creatives, we have those, and we are kind of fighting to find the opportunities, the funds, the co-productions, the partners around the world who can help us and empower us to, I mean, we don't need empowerment, but who can give us the space to also tell our own stories and just come through by making our films and then sending them out into the world and seeing who is connecting with them on a global level.
And so, we have Pigeon Wars. I imagine it's an advanced advanced script stage. You're probably looking for financing now.
Yes, I would say it's an earlier script stage. I mean, we have a first draft. I'm working with a co-writer that I love. Her name is Ban Fakih, also female writer-director from Lebanon, who also graduated from Columbia University with an MFA with a specialization in screenwriting. So she and I met the end of last year, and we connected on having both grown up with a very similar type of life in Lebanon and have a similar formation in writing and filmmaking from New York. And she was kind of the perfect person for Pigeon Wars. So when I approached her and asked her if she wanted to join me, she was very much keen. And over the past 8 months, since April of 2022, we've been working together, and we just finished a first draft. We're now taking a little bit of a break from it, and then beginning of 2023, we will be approaching our second draft, in which we try to make our characters, our relationships, and our structure stronger. And hopefully with the second draft, it can be ready to share, to start seeking out financing. And we've already started with a development grant that I received from Canada, because I'm also a Canadian citizen.
From Telefilm, I read that.
I was born in Montreal, and I got Telefilm development, which is what allowed me to go already, Ban and myself, to a screenwriting lab in France that we got selected to. It's called Groupe Ouest, Sélection Annuelle. It's all in French. It's a 9-month program. So that was really one of the reasons why the past year we were able to advance so quickly. On one hand, the lab. On the other hand, having Ban as a collaborator that I can really move much faster with. I mean, screenwriting alone is a lonely and difficult process, and sometimes you can be your own worst enemy and spend waste a lot of time either self-attacking or going down a wrong path. But when you're working with someone, it's just fun. It's a ping pong brainstorming situation. And we're about to write our second draft. And we have a Lebanese producer as well, Pierre Sarraf, who's the same co-producer who worked with me on Warsha. And I believe we'll be looking for a European kind of bridge person, probably France, because France, I already have a good track record with Warsha being pretty much a French co-production. So that's kind of what our plans are for 2023.
Great. And I'll let I'm always curious about the person I'm speaking to. So what does, as a final question, what does a quotidien look for you? I believe are you still based in New York City?
No, I live in Dubai now.
Okay, so wow. Okay, so how does all this gel together? What does a week in your life look like?
I mean, a week in my life is very difficult to describe right now, especially the past year. Thankfully, Warsha has traveled the world, and Pigeon Wars was selected in labs in France and projects, for example, in Marrakesh. So this year I had a lot of travel where I was switching between the hat of promoting Warsha, which is also eligible for the Oscars and shortlisted for the César, which we'll be finding out at the end of the year, hopefully, if we move on to the next phase of Oscar shortlist or César nomination between the end of this year and the beginning of next year. And on the other side, I would change to a different hat, which is a writer hat, where Ban and I would be working on developing Pigeon Wars and pitching it. For example, at Atlas Workshop, we were part of the pitching competition with the producer Pierre, and we won the second prize, the development prize there. So that's also like a big...
Yeah, it's a big boost.
Yeah, it's a big boost because there was a lot of people who were interested in the story, which makes it feel great and that there is...
And palpable.
An audience for it. But it is politicized. It comes from my heart. Lebanon is really my biggest source of inspiration. It's a big part of who I am. And then everywhere else I lived, be it New York or now Dubai, they are informing the kind of person that I am and the kind of stories I want to tell. But as of now, anything I write somehow still stems from Lebanon. And Dubai is a place where I just feel it's close. It's an Arab country, close enough to Beirut, where I can go often, but Dubai itself is calm, safe, easy, and undistracting. So that's where I get a lot of the work actually done. But Lebanon is where I go back for a lot of the research, the time I spend with Ban, with co-writing and seeing my family and friends, and kind of getting the energy that I need. So for me, Dubai is a place I wouldn't call myself so entrenched in the art scene there. I think the art scene there is very, very young, burgeoning, still trying to get its feet up. But for me, it's a very nice and easy and safe place to live while I work on my project.
And at least your bank account is not frozen.
Exactly.
I think that's happening in Lebanon. I think I saw something on Vice this week.
Yes, I mean that happened since 2019. Everyone's money was in Lebanese banks. Thankfully, my money was in a bank in the US because I was living in New York and in Dubai. But anyone who's had money in the bank, they cannot touch it anymore, and they will probably never be able to touch it. And we have a lot of friends and family who suffered from that. It could be your savings account, your kids' college fund.
I heard some crazy stories report to that anyway.
Exactly. So like New York and Lebanon, New York and Beirut are both cities that are extremely charming, extremely energetic, with a lot of people and art and culture, and you walk down the street and there's a million things you can be doing and a million things you can be getting, but that can also be distracting. So Dubai for me is a place where after I've kind of soaked up all of those energies, I can actually sit, because filmmaking is also a process where you're gathering, then there are moments where you really need to like sit and process and organize and analyze and bring out all of those things that and in those situations, all you really need is a safe space, good internet, good electricity,
good coffee. But that probably exists back at home too.
None of those issues that come up that you usually have to fight against.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be looking out for Pigeon Wars in the next couple of years. So
thank you.
Congratulations on the short, but also good luck on piecing your first feature and putting all those pieces together. It's an arduous, difficult task, but I think you're very grounded and ready to to sink your teeth into 2023.
Thank you. I'm really excited for 2023 and what has to come. It is a very long and difficult path, but as I said, there's some kind of addiction where you get a high. Like right now, the high I'm on just from Warsha, reaching audiences around the world, and having the Arab premiere in Red Sea, where finally I'm also feeling and getting the insights of Arab audience members from Saudi, from the Gulf, from Palestine and Jordan and Syria. It's just very, very special to know that when you work very hard on something and it takes a long time and you pour your heart into it, that you're also communicating with the rest of the world who they can also feel something, and it can, I don't know, it's a form of communication and connection that you feel very connected to the rest of the world.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.